Welcome to Socializing Security, where every week we have a discussion about security, compliance, and beyond.
Our goal is to learn and grow by socializing each week's topic with each other, our guests, and with you.
A quick compliance note, this podcast is meant for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal or regulatory advice.
We're glad you've joined us, and we hope you'll learn along with us. And welcome back to another episode of Socializing Security. We appreciate all of you as we kind of went off on the last episode. We really appreciate all of you who join us on a regular basis, and those of you who may be joining us for the first time. Hopefully this will be interesting enough to get you to become a regular as well. Today we've got kind of I guess I'm going to call it a little bit more of a breaking news type of an episode. It's more current events. I will probably talk about it in a somewhat evergreen way, but it's definitely something that is
what does evergreen mean? Because I feel like you use that term and I'm not sure that it's readily available.
Evergreen to those of us that do marketing activities on a regular basis is something that will always be relevant, always be worthwhile, may not need even much updating. So things like when I put together one of my solo episodes, or any of my solo episodes, I try to make those evergreen episodes. Like, hey, the next one I'll do is probably going to be about passwords and authentication. That is always going to be relevant. That's something that, while the dynamics may change and the things that we can do may change, best practices around a password do change, but very, very slowly. So we could talk about things that will always apply. How do you protect your privacy? How do you do this thing securely? But we are going to talk about something that's kind of new and recent, if you will. So we're kind of pushing off of a headline, if you will. So Milou, why don't you introduce what we've got teed up?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Socializing Security. I'm Milou, and you were just speaking and listened to with Brian. So we'll just go from there. Yeah. Hold on. I need to put myself on Do Not Disturb because it's chaos at the moment. That's just what's happening. In the meantime, though, from a Spotify and Shadow IT perspective, this came up on a recent episode that we just recently released back in like November of 25. So again, as we're trying to talk about it, we're trying to see if in that evergreen model, we would love for you to be able to go back and listen to that episode where we first introduced the idea. And that was on the Two Perfectionists Walk Into a Podcast, part 2, kind of like let's kind of see where we're at. A little bit of chaos. Do you like that episode, Brian? I don't know. It just happened.
A little bit of chaos.
Those are personally my favorite, just when, again, Brian's more structured and organized than I am, which is funny because I am like very organized in the regular life. So I feel like for me to say that about you, I'm like, I only mean that in the best way possible, but
it is who I am. I accept it.
From a Spotify perspective, I'm saying this coming from, I'm an active user in Spotify. We have content on the podcast specifically where I have said very much like Spotify came in and was my like unexpected like AI tool and kind of 2024. Now we're recording this in 25. We're in the fall, and there's been 2 major updates we really want to talk about today, being in August of 2025, Spotify released a new feature with instant messaging. And so suddenly now users, Brian and I, if we're friends on Spotify, we can actually just like send direct messages or DMs directly to one another within Spotify. And, that is a reasonable use case to being like, oh, hey, I'll do this sometimes, right? I listen to a song and I think about someone and I'll just, copy the link and I'll send it and be like, hey, check this out in Spotify. And now there's just the direct connection between 2 different users or actually groups of users within Spotify. And when we think about that from like a content creation or social media space, that is actually a really interesting new development for this technology, because can you imagine your favorite artist is Taylor Swift or something like that, and you have potentially the ability to collaborate with her on like different tracks that she's listening to. I think from a creator perspective, from an artist perspective, this could be really good news. And so I'm coming from being like, hey, I actually saw this and was like, oh, cool. Now I don't have to also use like Signal or text message or whatever other apps to just like send a little text occasionally being like, hey, I heard this song and I thought of you. But the risk officer in me is like, hold up, wait. For corporate IT and security, this is generally an application that's been whitelisted. So jump
So
in here
let's
because I just gave you a lot there.
no, and you're dropping off right where I wanted to pick up. So, two things I want you to define to start off with. You mentioned shadow IT and you mentioned whitelisting applications. Define those real quick.
Oh, I think you're going to be the better person to define shadow IT, but I'll give it a go.
Give it a go.
So when I explain it to clients that I work with, right, and we're thinking about, we have a asset register. We have had some really great other episodes on this podcast, Socializing Security, about asset inventory. I know, like, for the top of my head, I know one of the speakers we brought on is Steve Sims, and he's come in and really talked about back to the basics. Let's talk about just understanding what's within your environment, right? And when we say an environment, it could be anything from your cloud, your local, like any of that could be part of your system, your ecosystem, right? Like whatever technology tools you're using. And if you have somebody that works for you and they have a laptop and they have access to the internet, right? We already know that there is like a risk there. Hopefully we understand that like Microsoft Word or like Google Chrome, those are software applications that any user at the company is going to use those things. Shadow IT is the stuff that we are aware of, but we might not necessarily know about. So on your asset register where you have, your software tools that are listed, you have Microsoft, you have Slack, maybe Spotify might be on there. But even if it was already tagged to your asset register, especially when we're thinking about small companies that don't have the same type of resources and they don't have the type of tooling and technology to be aware of what is on an individual's computer, if it's an approved software technology, then it's most likely been whitelisted or approved by the technology team, by IT, whoever is doing that work. Or it's just an app that everybody has on their phone or everybody has on their laptop. So it's already kind of in the system regardless. That would be something that is kind of been whitelisted. But what's risky about this with Spotify when we're talking about suddenly having instant messaging, that's not the use case that the IT security compliance groups really thought about when they were approving it the first time.
When we look at an application like Spotify that changes its approach, one thing at the very nerdy level of things I look at is, okay, can we block that one function? Can we stop that one thing from doing whatever it's doing? In some applications, that's possible within the application. Some applications, you can block it at the network layer and say, we're just not going to allow this kind of traffic to go in and out. So we can allow people to stream music and we're okay with that, but we don't want them to use these other features. So we're going to shut them down somehow. And I don't know if you've dug into it enough to really know whether that's the case or not. But that is one way to look at an application like this, where you're like, okay, we're not going to maintain that. You're on your own if you're going to install this type of thing. We're not going to make it available. So like for me at work, we're to another extreme where the applications we can load on our laptops are essentially the applications that IT manages. Everything else is mostly blocked. And they've
blacklisted. Yeah. Kind of that.
I wouldn't even say that far. Like they've got the laptops locked down to the point where we just can't. I don't have permission to install things.
Yeah.
Whether they would approve them or not. Now, nothing's 100%. There are things that do get through. But my ability to do anything I want on my laptop for my personal laptop versus my work laptop is very dramatically different. And I've been a power user most of my career. So when they start locking things down, I tend to be the ones that get in the exception group, because it's like, okay, well, Brian's been there, done that. He knows what's safe, what's not safe. We'll trust him to not install something bad there. I'm fully in marketing at this point, so they don't trust me like that anymore. And so
I feel like you get by though. That's what's like dangerous about you, in the sense that you can talk the talk. And so you're dangerous enough that the IT team might be like, oh, sure, like Brian's good. He's got this. And then you know.
So I can sometimes get into those apps that are, I would say, are neither whitelisted nor blacklisted. They're truly in that shadow IT space where it's just a bunch of unknowns going on. And so being able to take things off that whitelist, these are the things that they have provided to us that I'm going to be able to do in a fully corporate side of things. And then versus the blacklist where they're actively going to stop it from happening. So it sounds like to me, just to maybe a little bit of reiterate in a different words, what you were saying is Spotify kind of falls in that gray area, maybe. Because to me, when you say whitelisted, it's like, okay, we've checked this off. We approve of this at some level. And so maybe it's more on the white side than and I just realized the terminology we're using is not necessarily the most inclusive. So let me apologize for that.
That's okay. We can pick different colors or whatever, but we're basically saying an approved tool or one that's just not been approved yet, whether it's been denied or it's been just like rejected. We're just trying to figure out the color thing, 100% like white and dark. It is kind of a cyber IT background. It's kind of like there's some culture there for us in the security side and cyber, but yeah. I would say, we can say
approved
kind of
versus not approved.
Approved, denied, like approved, rejected, whatever. I want to pivot, and I hope you're ready to make this like a little bit scarier. It's November of 25 as we record, so like we're out of spooky season for me and we're really starting to ramp up now into like the corporate gift giving and like kind of like thank you notes and that type of year. But I'm concerned about Spotify and the instant messaging, not only just from like a corporate IT perspective, because I think that's something, that's a quick policy or just like an update, send it out. You can, I just kind of in the background was looking, and there does seem to be, if you're on enterprise levels of these types of apps, you can definitely like turn them off. I think on the personal side too, you can actually opt out of these messages. You could just like turn them off completely in your privacy settings, or you can actually just be like, hey, I want to block people, right? It's turning into a social media platform. I think you had said something on the other episode that was like, oh, I don't want another one. What did you say? Do you remember?
Yeah. If they're going to turn into a social platform, like I've never bought in. I use Spotify not as heavily as you do, but I have not bought into any of the social stuff. So I don't have any friends on Spotify. I don't need friends.
No,
like listening to music is not a friends thing.
We should be friends on Spotify. We have a podcast on Spotify, Brian.
We don't. We have a podcast that is available through Spotify. If you wanted me to get technical about it and get nerdy and talk to you nerdy about it,
that's fair.
But like, I like listening to music. I like hanging out with my friends. Sometimes the two overlap, but it's not to me ever been a thing where it's like listening to music is a social thing.
Okay, well,
and so that might be part of it for me. It might also be the fact that I used to do a ton of social media and have more or less cut it out of my life for my own health and sanity.
Fair.
And realize I'm not really missing it. I mean, some days there's like, oh man, I haven't heard from this person in a while. But those were not meaningful conversations. And I would prefer to be like, okay, I need to contact this person and talk to them.
For sure. You prefer kind of more of like, what is that? Like organic outreach or whatever in the marketing speak, what is it? Just direct. I'm just going to lean into it if that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
I will say, I was thinking about this after we kind of like recorded our last episode and this kind of came up where we were thinking, hey, that to me is like, hey, we should have an episode about that, because not only is there a corporate risk here, there's a pretty significant privacy risk here. And this is something that I would really like parents to think about that might be listening, or individuals that there's a security risk too. There's not just privacy, there's security, right? It's a whole new avenue potentially for spam. And so this is a great time if you use Spotify or any type of similar app. If you don't have two-factor authentication turned on, I would go in, maybe just like go check your settings, go check your privacy setting, maybe refresh your passwords, make sure you toggle on the multi-authentication, even better if you can use an authenticator app, but otherwise, just some other, because now suddenly this is a place where my account could get hacked, and suddenly, right, Brian, somebody could be reaching out on behalf of me and sending stuff that's like, oh my God, I love this Taylor Swift song. And you could reasonably be like, oh my God, Milou loves Taylor Swift. Click it. And it's not that.
Yeah.
So that's a new vector.
And that's where I look at it as like, it's just another social media. Like I don't need another vector for people to spam me to try to connect with me in ways that I don't want or need in my life. You know, there's plenty of stories of abuse through social media. You know, exes
Yeah, sadly, that's
harassing.
not new. I wish it was. I wish it was a
Yeah,
new thing.
and all of these things are now on a brand new platform. Um, you
Which
know,
means
which
Spotify is
means
probably also learning what that means from like a
yep,
compliance regulatory perspective. I'm sure their compliance legal, whoever's involved, is probably
yep,
like, whoa, this is a new thing, new product feature, new game changing thing means
yeah.
change.
And just like compliance isn't security, they're going to miss some of the things that other platforms have learned over the years. They're going to have to make corrections and new policies and deal with the fallouts of getting it wrong at some point, that these other platforms have either have encountered at some point, because it always is going to happen, without the benefit of having done it in the past. And with an extra dose, and this is the part that worries me the most, of like, it is like you talked about it yourself, it is so embedded in your life today that all of a sudden this new vector comes at you that you weren't expecting, that you didn't sign up for, that you don't
Yeah.
want. Because if you had an abusive ex that would harass you on Twitter and Blue Sky and LinkedIn and all these other places that we already have social media, now all of a sudden Spotify is another vector for that. And do you abandon a platform that you've enjoyed and that you've loved? I'm glad
Or
to hear that
change your
they've,
privacy settings. Yeah, you could
and I'm
you could
glad to
either
hear that they figured that out at least.
Yeah, I'm sure they have quality control testing, and I'm sure they did have their, whatever audits and reviews they did to just opt out, especially because like within the US like kind of regulatory space right now, there's a lot of buzz and conversation around like protecting children and making sure that we're being really mindful of like child sexual abuse materials. And this is the one where I'm not trying to bring down the mood, but I'm concerned about parents of adolescents here and children that might have limited smartphones or have full tech that,
Yeah.
again, this is something that could be really positive of, I want to share this great song that I heard. I do that all the time. Just like me personally, I post occasionally like, oh, this is my playlist that I'm working to, or like I share music a lot because it matters a lot to me in my day to day. Like I used to play the cello and I've just grew up like around music. It's a really big part of my family and my background. But I am struggling with the idea now too that this is potentially a new app that parents probably already approved on children's cell phones, being like, yeah, of
Hmm.
course you can use Spotify. We're all sitting in the car and we're all listening, like probably have the family account. And that could be a scary area where suddenly we might have a different vector where parents, again, are potentially not aware of the fact that this new update has been happening or changing. And suddenly, again, like really fun until suddenly your child is getting bullied on Spotify. And
Yeah.
that could be really intense too, from like if it was a bot, also scary. Like they could know your music taste and they could just keep sending you different types of music to try to skew your mood and actually start to manipulate you to do things. I thought about it
Social
and then I
engineering.
was like, whoa, yeah, this
Yeah.
could be a really scary thing if it's not handled well. And so I do really hope that anybody, we usually don't try to like focus too much on one technology, but for this one specifically, I just would hope that Spotify is being thoughtful about this, and I'm sure that they've done their due diligence. And I think as consumers, people that use the product, keep talking about it, that's the best way for them to
Yeah.
actually invest in resources and compliance people and anybody that needs to be in the room to be like, hey, are we being thoughtful about this? Because now that they're suddenly not just a technology company specifically around like music, I'm sure they were already considering themselves a social media company. We just might not, as end users, have realized that that's what was happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I definitely looked at it in a quasi social media just because I knew, you can make friends and you could do things. And, with my family, we will do the jukebox thing where everybody can add music. Um, so, those things I saw in there, but didn't really like, I don't use those. And so therefore they don't necessarily affect me. But now all of a sudden, if somebody has the ability to search for me and ping me directly with a message, then all of a sudden it turns into a very different ball game. Um, just like
So yeah, like think about it like just from like a what could you do if you were worried about it, if you're kind of like Brian being like, hey, I use this tool or whatever and I like it and I'm not, this is a great time, like look at the security settings that are available to
Yep.
you, do a privacy review sending and all of us should be doing that regardless. It's just it's tough because we're all really busy and a lot of these technology companies are pushing updates to their terms of service, their privacy, all their security stuff so rapidly to keep up with the rate of change that we're seeing with like any AI technologies. So I would
Yeah.
say that's a great time to do a refresh. And if you want, maybe make your Spotify profile more anonymous.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the nature of the program has changed. So you've got to view it differently. You've got to look at it as a different type of tool than what you thought maybe it was when you first acquired it. To that end, like any other conversation these days, we've got to talk a little bit about AI. Because there are other changes in Spotify, even more recent than the chat functionality that touches on your favorite topic, ChatGPT.
I like how you just kicked it to me there, but I do love a good ChatGPT talk. I really, ChatGPT, I think OpenAI was kind of like the shoe-in for everybody, I'm sure, if we're thinking about like a corporate love note kind of idea for like a shout out for 25 or like what we did for 24. My guess is if I'm betting right now in November for the end of the year, probably ChatGPT is probably going to be my biggest all-star, which I'm shocked to say because I would not have said that last year. I just fundamentally just really disagreed with some of the stuff they were doing. That being said, there is now also in October of 2025, it seems like ChatGPT, which is owned by OpenAI, right? That OpenAI ChatGPT model, there's now a connection between ChatGPT and Spotify. And so those two technology giants have basically come together and been like, hey, we say there being value between our two brands sharing this platform, basically. And, now it seems like if I, as a user of both, could basically be like, hey, I am interested in these things and I love these types of music and I want that for a playlist. I will say I personally have done that just when, I've been like, oh, I'm thinking about this song and I'm really into this. Like, what mood should I put in for my Spotify? And that's been really useful. It's now seems like there's actually like just like a direct integration between the two technologies with their APIs. So basically, if you have a login for one or both, you can basically like log in, connect those two tools. And suddenly now ChatGPT can basically suggest recommendations for your Spotify. Cool, innovative technology shows some interesting, like I see the use cases. I am also like, the privacy risk officer in me is struggling with okay, ChatGPT is most likely an approved corporate tool. Most companies, a lot of them, at least from like an AI governance perspective, have greenlit them for use. Spotify is probably the same. If I were a people ops lead or in HR or anything like that, would I necessarily anticipate that my IT team now suddenly has access to individual employee personal playlist recommendations? Again, I haven't looked at this one as closely. And so my assumption is that there's some like hardening around these things to make sure that there's not too much exposure.
Don't make assumptions.
But right. It's maybe something that we should think about. And also, if there are any companies that are sharing accounts or anything like that, not that they're supposed to do that, but in a theoretical world where there's like one company login for something like Spotify for the shop or something, if that account is, it just suddenly your AI tooling has access to something that maybe we haven't thought through.
Yeah. I mean, such is the story with every AI story. Have we thought about it all the way? Where are the walls at? Where are the full walls? Where are the half walls? Where are the easily stepped over walls? To make sure that these things stay appropriately separated. I'm to the point of like, I don't have Spotify on my work laptop because it is my work laptop. And when I want to listen to Spotify, it's bring up my personal laptop next to me on my desk or on my phone and connect it to my speakers, which my work laptop doesn't have access to connect to. Um, those types of things to keep those segregated because there's nobody at work needs to know what I'm listening to. I don't even want my friends to listen to. So It's an interesting one for me. To me, I look at it less about ChatGPT plus Spotify and ChatGPT plus everything in the world. So we're kind of in this world where we're used to, hey, connect this with this. Hey, you can post this on, well, while you're in LinkedIn. I don't even know if this is possible. While you're in LinkedIn, you can also post this to Twitter or to Blue Sky or whatever. And therefore, I've got to go through that whole weird authentication thing that kind of looks like LinkedIn, but it kind of looks like Twitter, but is really Twitter, trying to look like it's LinkedIn so that it's a seamless experience. When I look at ChatGPT and its voracious need for data and all of the questions around what happens to your data, every time I connect something, where does it go? What is ChatGPT doing with it besides that one question that I ask it at that point in time? Especially when, as you look at it, apparently if you just mention Spotify in a chat with ChatGPT, it'll ask you to connect with Spotify. And if you could ask it to start playing music, and it'll play music directly within the ChatGPT interface, which is indicative of pretty high level of connection between the two, which makes sense, especially from a consumer perspective where, there are technologies in which you can fully embed another technology inside of it. And so I don't know if there are other applications, other solutions that are doing this with ChatGPT already, but as I start thinking about all of the other apps that I use, and if I was a heavy user of ChatGPT, what would I want in there? What would I not want in there? Like, do I want it to connect with LinkedIn and have, be able to chat with ChatGPT, looking at this, researching this thing, allowing it to then connect to LinkedIn to say, okay, let's say I'm on a job hunt and it helps me find this company, this posting that is in my interest area. And then say, okay, who do I know that works here? And it goes over to LinkedIn and it uses those connections and it figures it out and brings it over. And then can I use ChatGPT to then open up a direct message with those people and start sending them messages through the ChatGPT interface? And can I use it to put a post out publicly saying, hey, I'm really interested in this company. They got some cool technology, and make up something from that perspective. Things like that allow me to not even have to open up LinkedIn because it has access to everything, including kind of this agentic space to completely be me.
And this is good, scary,
Yes.
all of the things.
I mean, there's a ton of it depends to that question.
So I would just say that as somebody who also makes sure Brian is protecting his wonderful ideas, that is a wonderful idea and something that you should explore, and also a terrifying one.
Yeah.
Because I can speak from personal experience of like working with generative AI on model training and figuring that out. It's terrifying. As somebody who now really has something that sounds, acts, could be like me, is cool. I call it my second brain. Also terrifying.
I have told my team at work to never trust my voice ever again, just because
we do this.
I actually put in the concept
Can
of
you
never
explain
trust a
why you
podcaster's
say that?
voice.
Because you say that because
when it comes to the idea of being able to create realistic audio and video and to take it to the next level, the deep fakes, like we saw, was a big thing like late 2023, if I remember right. Now they've gotten to the point where like people have apps on their phone and they can literally type what they want and out comes a video of Morgan Freeman saying that. And it sounds realistic and it looks realistic. And that's dependent on having a good source material. And it doesn't take a whole lot from what I understand these days. And when you've got 70 some episodes of a podcast that is your voice 100% of the time, or some percent of the time.
Most of the time.
For me,
pretty
most
much
of the time.
like basically like 99.9% of the time. Yes.
That's a lot of training material. That's a lot of both audio and video training material.
I feel like now I need you to stop talking because I'm worried you're basically just giving fodder to somebody to just troll you later. And I feel like that's going to be an interesting phone call for me. But I will say to any of the listeners that, say you're just joining us. What?
Have a safe word.
Safe word, great, sure. Also, just if you want to learn more about generative AI and you're starting to hear stories like what Brian and I are talking about, where we're just saying like, hey, we don't want to come in from like a, oh my God. But like, I'm pretty sure that the founder of like the technology behind Gen AI is very much coming around being like, yeah, this is so scary now. I'm not happy about how this turned out. That is definitely something we should talk about for a future episode. Brian, I'm just going to say it here. We should look at the Nobel Peace Prize winner and really like flesh that out. But the idea that this technology and tooling is just being changed and could, again, be potentially manipulated for good or bad. Used for, I don't know if manipulated is the right way, but when you're talking about social engineering, and we're kind of hinting at that this whole conversation, right? If we're talking about a tool like Spotify that most of us understand, it's out there. I'm sure most people understand what like Spotify or iTunes, any of that stuff, like Apple Music. We're familiar with that as a technology. If you're curious and you're like, hey, I don't understand necessarily what Milou and Brian mean when they're talking about being like, hey, a voice could be trained off of, what that looks like, I would say start to do some like idle research on YouTube or wherever you like to look for other content. Brian and I can definitely like give you some input. We also at a certain point are like, hey, from a privacy perspective, I'm not sure how much actively I really want to be in that space because it's scary. I do a lot of content creation on social media and I don't like it. It's fundamentally against a lot of my privacy things, but it also helps me support my family. And so I've had to just like float the risk and change things around. If you are somebody that's joining the podcast today, listening in or viewing us for the first time, welcome. Again, we're super happy to have you here. We have a bunch of content that we would love for you to listen to and engage with. If you're genuinely being like, I don't understand what they mean, I would search terms being like, hey, example of, I don't know, Brian, what do you think? Like example of voice use in AI tool?
Deep fake,
Well,
voice
that might be a little
replication.
scarier. Deep fake is for maybe the second or third search. That could get real scary real quick.
Yeah. AI voice generation, AI video generation. I mean, there's no lack of content and analysis out there because AI is the topic everybody talks about. So
yeah, I think there's some pretty cool examples that, we can definitely try to see if we can grab some. But I would also say if you're just like interested and you're joining us and, I try to just always try to explain stuff at a level that like I hope that most people can understand. And I would say if you're concerned about it and you're familiar with maybe you've gotten a voicemail of somebody, somebody's left you a message on your phone and, you thought it was somebody and it's somebody else. Like, or you run into somebody and you see somebody out in public and you're like, you run up to them and you're like, oh my God, so-and-so, hi, so good to see you. But they turn around and it's not that same. You're like, oh shoot, I'm so sorry. I thought you were somebody else. That in the world of AI that we are at, even I think the difference between 24, 25, I am way more scared than I was then than I am now. Also, given again, our content, as you had said, our video, our fate, like even the other day, man, where was I? I was at a corporate event and I wanted to get like pictures of like something that was going on. I got to drive a race car, which was super cool and on my bucket list. And, you're super used to like doing that and like seeing there. And then, you get afterwards, you like want the pictures, whatever.
Yeah.
The opt-in, right, was like, hey, we use facial recognition. So if you want these pictures, you have to opt in to do it or you have to manually search it. And I was like, I think I'm going to manually search this one as much as it's annoying. I also don't feel like I should have access to everybody's photo from the day. That felt kind of weird. But I'm also like, it's a small example too that everybody's risk tolerance will be different with all of this. So if you're joining us and you're learning more and you love Spotify, you love your music, I do too. So like we can be friends in that regard. I'm probably going to turn off the instant communication as I say that just because I'm not sure. I have no clue what my like profile picture looks like on Spotify because I never thought about it as potentially a more public facing application. I know my playlists have always been private because I was just like, hey, what I like could be taken and somebody could be like, oh, Milou likes this song that has these bad words, whatever. Like, I just have always been mindful about being like, hey, I don't want that to get taken out of context. And I'm a little concerned now that Spotify as a music and entertainment app is now also a social media app. I'm a little scared.
Wish I could disagree with you, but I'm not going to be able to talk you off that limb. Find somebody a little bit closer to the trunk.
No, we really need somebody who like is more like, yeah, no, do it. And again, I don't love when we end on a down note. So, do you have a fun thing that you want to talk about before we wrap up?
Yeah, go listen to some fun music. You don't have to share it with people. You don't have to look at it as a social media app. It can just be an application that you use to listen to music. And that's how I'm going to use it. And, if what we just talked about is a little bit scary, that's good. That's a good thing, in my opinion.
Listen in, join us, socialize with us, keep listening.
Be a little bit scared of these things because things are moving. I mean, the whole break things and move fast ethos comes out of Facebook. And I hate that. I hate that mantra. I hate that mantra with a passion. And maybe it's my history with healthcare and supporting that as a vertical. Maybe it's all of these life-altering effects of ransomware and other malware. I don't think we should be moving fast and breaking things. And a platform like Spotify is very minor in that regard. But it only takes one slip up. So yeah, go enjoy your music. You don't have to make it a social platform. You don't have to use those features. Unfortunately, you probably do have to go in and disable them and turn them off.
Yeah, you definitely have to opt out.
and that's just a regular good
depends
best
where you are.
to have.
It depends where you are. That could be different, but if we're thinking to a US audience, yes, like
we haven't analyzed that piece of the puzzle. So some countries, your mileage may vary.
Yeah,
which is always the case.
We'll take that disclaimer, but again, in general, I would assume it's probably going to be a elective opt-out.
Yeah, that's the way these types of things usually are. So, to be positive, if that was scary to you, it's scary to us too. And welcome to the community. You're now part of our network, and we welcome you with open arms, but maybe not necessarily with hugs.
Sometimes depends who it is. It depends.
Some people are huggers, and that's okay.
Brian and I probably both are probably not, but it depends. We have stickers. We like to share those out at events.
Ask us for stickers, please do.
Yes, we have many. All right, and we'll be back on another episode soon. Thank you so much for socializing with us.
Yep, thanks everybody. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Socializing Security. We hope you learned a thing or two with us.
If you'd like to continue socializing with us on this topic or have feedback, we'd love to hear from you on LinkedIn or social media. Just search for Socializing Security. Or you can email us at info@socializingsecurity.com.
Until next time, stay social and stay secure.